Sorry.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our September school board meeting. Call the roll, please,
Mr. Jewell?
Here.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Here.
Mr. Duckman? Here. Mrs. McIntosh?
Here.
And Mr. Moore?
I'd like for everybody to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hook for the program recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Members of the board, we have a couple departments here early in the year just to kind of give you quick updates into their programs. So first up, I'm going to have Kim Perkins, our Director of Special Education, come on forward.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I wrote things out because I didn't want to forget anything. We have a wonderful department, and they've done an incredible job because this new year, we have off in about 3 days, we got 21 new children to service in our program. Our intervention specialists, psychologists, and related personnel have done an amazing job working furiously to determine whether or not we can transfer documents coming in from these new students, to complete planning meetings for those we cannot, and then to develop and or amend those documents coming in. So they've done just an amazing job, our department has, all of them have. And we welcome all of those new students and their families to our district. We're happy to have them here. Then we also have a new, just so you know, a new school psychologist. His name is Martin McGinley. He is a seasoned professional. He's been working with our families and teams throughout all of these processes. We also have a new speech and language pathologist, and her name is Megan French, and she's doing a wonderful job out of the gate because that 21 new students doesn't include our little preschool babies who come in too. So she's working very furiously with our team to do that as well. Our students and staff are, they've just beginning receiving the services of our new behavior coach. We did have these services last year. We are continuing them, thank you, Mr. Hook, for those services this year. She's going in, and we've made several referrals, and she's going in and consulting with our classroom teachers, not just for our department, to help them to implement some interventions to help our students acclimate and get those behaviors addressed. And that could be in the environment, it could be a whole class, or it could be individualized intervention recommendations. She's doing a great job. And also she's going to be with our department on the 4th, our next in-service day, teaching our staff, and that includes our EAs as well, and part of that process, how to complete functional behavior assessments, how to understand that data, and then develop behavior intervention plans. That would be in the afternoon with our department. In the morning, though, we've opened it up to even gen ed teachers as well, because she's going to be presenting behavior interventions for RTI that would also include the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 interventions. So I think that's going to be very productive. I know we have conferences at the elementary, so I'm kind of sad some of them can't come, but if they just want to drop on in, it's going to be right in here, which will be great. And then we also have something new that Hamilton County ESC is now serving our children that are hearing impaired. And we're blessed to have them because now we can actually rent the newest and best technology. We lease that equipment, and you know how fast technology, oh no, Mr. Bruce knows that, rolls over, so our kids can then benefit from the greatest, newest technology. And our newest hearing impaired teacher is Stephanie Kabasik, and then also Stephanie Carney is our audiologist from Hamilton County ESC. And we also have a new transition coordinator to our district, and this is Krista Gaines. She's here on Mondays. But we have kind of expanded services with our transitional services. So she's also going to be collaborating with our middle school staff, who we wrote a DD grant and it was accepted. And so we have expanded our job coach, who's usually housed at the high school, to include our middle school to build those transition skills with them as well, and to help them to have some work study opportunities. So before I give you details on that, I'll tell you quickly. Our DD grant proposal that was approved also gave us the opportunity to purchase a mobile sensory station so that students can experience that. And the reason we want it mobile is so that when we get in a new building, we can share that, so it can be wheeled around to benefit our kids, to expand those sensory experiences. And then also, we were blessed to be able to be granted some iPads. So we're going to be replenishing and adding to our staff for iPads. Right now, we're working with our technology department to see how many we can get under that grant for that funding. And we think we can get more than what we actually pitched. We also are getting some Chromebooks to help with fine motor assessment, both at the elementary and at the secondary, to help our kids for us to understand where they are with their fine motor skills through assessments on those devices. We have also resources for the middle and high school students to expand their career readiness and exploration. That was part of the grant as well. And also to be able to have materials for our high school, and particularly Mr. Tincher's room, so that they can create an on-site copy and card center. So if you are looking for an anniversary birthday card or anything else, please keep Wednesdays in mind, because our students would like to make those for you. And the Cricket actually came a couple of days ago, so they're going to be starting that soon. And then those continued services from the job coach, those are expanding, and we are blessed because that way we can support our kids getting those job skills early on before they come to the high school. And through that transition coordinator and our job coach at the middle school, we believe our participation in the work programs would be so far at Sassy Scissors. We believe we're also going to get into the Country Peddler. I had talked to the barbershop people, and they were very nice and welcoming our kids to come in. But we may have others. We're trying to do walking field trips, and our teacher wants to make sure we have their permission slip so that we can walk, but it needs to be weather defined. And then our high school people, right now we're going to go to Franklin Ridge Skilled Nursing Center, Gross Lumber, and Sakara Hair Salon, but there could be another opportunity also at a coffee shop in Lebanon. So the high school kids will also continue to participate in the ICRON learning and job skills we talked about last year. So I'm happy about that for them. And they're going to be doing that on Thursdays routinely. We've expanded that to other kids, not just in the most intensive classroom. And just so you know, we do now have a district autism team. And they did a great job over the summer working with Ocali and creating, and that's the Ohio Center of Autism and Low Incidence. Our team may expand, and we're going to talk about that on October 4th, to additional team members who might be interested. And it's to bring that awareness in our district on how to accommodate for those children who could be on the spectrum. And we want to make sure that we do that and make that awareness. We also developed an action plan that includes the supporting and implementation of MTSS this year, which at Grigsby and Alden Brown, they have rolled that out. There's a lot of tools for the teachers to learn. It is our first year, and they're doing a great job. So it's very hard to understand this umbrella of MTSS. So that would be multi-tiered systems of support. And then also our autism team is planning a district-wide event in April for Autism Awareness Month. So be on tune for that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
How are we doing on ratios with all these new students coming in?
That is a great point. Well, we have several kids that are open enrolled.
Okay.
And so that did bump us up quite a bit, maintain that up. As they transitioned over, it did keep those caseloads kind of high, except for our most intensive classrooms. So those seem to be okay right now. We do have to be kind of cautious. And you know how preschool goes. They come and they come and they come. So right now we're at, AM, PM, and then 1/2 a day for the AM. So if we need room to grow, we possibly could, with Mr. Hook and your approval. Finding a teacher might be kind of tricky. But I think that we're doing okay right now, but we're right up there. So I'll be honest with you.
Kids.
Of those 21 new ones, what's maybe the varying spectrum, without too much detail or anything, but are a lot of them just speech needs, or are they behavior needs?
No, that would have been great though if they were speech only. We had a couple of speech kids, that were new to the district, but no, we had a couple of them with some intensive needs that we couldn't serve here, but we are serving them elsewhere. It does take a while, as you know, and we collected that data, we conversed with the team, and we then made some decisions as a team to make sure that the supports are in place for them, even if it's not in district, but outside of district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Yeah, Mr. Terry. Just a quick update on our technology, where we're at, where we're going.
Good evening.
Just a quick update on technology over the summer. We've got several projects ongoing. Yes, I do have a list here, so I'm forgetting that. We purchased new document cameras for math teachers for the new Eureka Math program. We also added new laptops in our middle school STEM lab. We updated PCs in the business labs at the high school and middle school. We also updated 3 existing Chromebook carts and added 1 additional new cart at the intermediate school, and a new diagnostic laptop and routing software for the transportation equipment also. Another big focus this year, this summer, was infrastructure for the new building, which will move us to a 10 gig internal network, which is going to be great. We got the best quote for that new infrastructure down, an additional $60,000 in cost. And we're also able to spread the federal reimbursement costs out over 2 fiscal years instead of 1, which will save us up to 6 figures for that new building equipment. So we'll have all that equipment ready to go as soon as we need it. We'll jump on that. So just a very exciting time in the district. I think everybody's ready to get in.
Question, with those new updates that you replaced all those computers, are we at Windows 10?
We're at Windows 10. We're rolling that out across every new computer.
Good.
Is the new maybe we talked about this before and it just slipped my mind, but is that Cat 5 on there or is it going to be fiber optic?
It's fiber optic to the building.
Okay.
Yeah. And Cat 6.
Cat 6.
Internal. So it should be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's it. A lot is going on, obviously, with the new building, trying to take advantage of E-rate funds, federal dollars that will not be here later, and trying to anticipate we're able to secure some monies for the hardware that's going to go into the backbone of the new building, which was pretty important for us financially. So, a lot of things happening, and really appreciate Bruce. Yeah, appreciate being here. So that's your program.
At this time, we'll turn it over to our treasurer, Mr. Bassler. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, at this time, it's, we have a time slotted for our visitor comments. If we have any visitor that wants to make a comment. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Bassler.
Thank you. My only non-action item is just a reminder of the OSBA Fall Regional Conference that's coming up October the 10th. Mrs. Lanehart and Mrs. McIntosh and Mr. Hope will be representing all of us at that conference. And I sent an email earlier today as a reminder with the agenda attached to that email. So just a reminder for that. Next is my action items. I need approval for the minutes for the last regularly scheduled board meeting, which was on August 26th.
Need a motion, so moved. Need a second. Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
And Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Next is the financial report that was part of your packet. Heavy expenses, but it's that time of year when it's heavy expenses that we're paying off startup costs for the beginning of the year. No surprises. Budget's rolling along very well. You're going to improve my appropriations, hopefully. next item. But things are going well.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh,
Second.
second by Mrs. Lainhart. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
And Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Next is the permanent appropriations for the year. As you know, temporary appropriations cover the months of July and August, and then in September, I need to have permanent appropriations in place, which was part of your packet. Just a little bit of dollar change in the general fund, just a few $1,000s. So when you're talking about 17 million, a few $1,000s is not much of a change. So I need approval for the appropriations for this fiscal year.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mr. Duncan,
Second.
second by Mrs. Lainhart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
And Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
And then lastly, I need approval for a donation from the Lioness Club to help with snacks in the Alden Brown Special Needs Classroom.
Need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lainhart,
Second.
by Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
And one final thing before I'm done, I forgot to give you the best news of all. Auditors are going to be here starting on Wednesday. So the last year's audit will begin this Wednesday. They'll be on site and hopefully not causing too much of a problem, but I have let all the principals know that they may potentially be around in the building. So that's my report for the month.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hook for the superintendent's report.
I know that's Dan's favorite time of the year. So. Yes, I just some quick construction updates, a little bit of information, just kind of where we're at. It is, I just uploaded some more pictures up to the website. If not, they'll be in the morning. They'll be up. Kind of where we're at, just in the short version. We've got roofs on, are completed as in dried in. In the construction world, that means that it's sealed and they're able to start drywalling in both the high school section and in the elementary section. Now they'll do some edge work, so don't get panicked when you see the membrane hanging over to the end. There's still some finish work that they'll do okay, but it's so they can actually start drywalling, which is really pretty amazing for this time. So those two sections, and that's the far north side and the far south side. Secondly, they just poured the deck, first floor deck above the music room, which is now which will be the 7th grade section. Finishing dropping steel in, and they'll pour the other side, which will be the 8th grade wing. Okay, that flooring will go in likely tomorrow or the next day, but yet this week. What does that mean then? That means they'll keep going now up to the rafters on the front end, which is, you got the administrative offices down and the music, and then above that, connecting the two elementary to the high school is the junior high wing. Okay, then they'll start pressing that to the rafters. Probably looking at dropping steel in there probably the first part of November. So you're only a month away from bringing the masons getting it all the way up to that. The big gym, if you've glanced over it, that's roaring up as well. That's to the rafters probably by 2 weeks away, mid-October-ish. You're going to see that roof start to get placed. Right now,
How far are they from putting the roof over the auditorium?
they're probably looking, the auditorium, that's where the masons are right now. They're in that section now going up. Okay, that's so if you're looking at the front, that's behind where the junior high section and the elementary admin and music area. So that is, the walls are going, that's where they're heavily pushing block now.
They get that under roof, and then everything's.
It's pretty getting close. Yeah, because the next thing, they're gonna go, the masons, everything's timed so that the steel follows when they get in, and the next section, then the roofers are in, et cetera. So they're gonna go, the masons will go from the auditorium, they'll move back towards the central kitchen, and then outward to the two dining areas. So they're, in sections, they working in, and then they'll work out the back end. Okay, so that's the last pieces you'll start seeing, but you're talking about, in a month, it's gonna look pretty amazing. I mean, and it'll look big, because you're gonna have it up pretty high. So, sometime over around the holiday, Christmas time, you're gonna see them seal it up pretty good, and then the masons will switch from bearing walls, which is the cinder blocks like these that support the roofs and everything. Then they'll start moving outward to the pretty block that you see like on the outside of a brick home or something, only what we've selected. And what they'll do is they'll move all the scaffolding to the outside of the building, and then they'll put plastic underneath, and they'll wrap it and connect it to the top, and then they'll blow heat in. So unless it's some extreme weather day, the masons won't stop, and they'll just start going up with brick in the middle of winter. So they got all the little tricks down to really keep that thing on target. And that's the biggest thing. I give you a lot of detail, or in general, there's obviously a lot more to it, but bottom line is, we are, they hate it when I say we're a little ahead of schedule, but I love it. We got to keep pushing it. We're on budget, so things are going well. I think when you look at that building, and you see it typically more on Friday nights now that you start seeing just how massive that thing is. You don't see it because the high schools, when you're going down Jamaica, high school blocks a lot of it. But from the backside, if you're going to get a burger at the concession stand on a Friday, or a soccer match or something, you look over there, it's like, oh, whoa, whew, there's a lot going on. Well, there's about 1.5 million pounds of steel that'll be in that structure. Masonry blocks, cinder blocks, you're talking about 240,000 of those that'll be in that building. And another 235 bricks when it's all done, 235,000 bricks. You also have a little over 4,700 cubic yards of concrete. That's a lot of trucks. You're talking, I don't know, what do they put in there, 10 in a dump truck? Or I'd have to go look and see. But the first time they poured, and they had the row of cement trucks out the thing and all the way down Jamaica. That was just the high school slab. So it's there's been a lot of concrete. Over 3 miles of wire in that facility. So it's pretty amazing. And when you start thinking how big it is, if you start at one end of the high school, far corner of the high school, and you walk the main corridor and go around the gym and down to the elementary side, it's a quarter of a mile. See, there and back, you're at a half. It didn't take you long to put some mileage on there. So I know that for all the walkers here. So anyway, just some fun facts. thought it'd be interesting to hear about it. Moving on to my action items. Need approval for item B1, classified resignation, letter A is listed.
Need a motion. First by Mrs. Lanehart.
Second.
Second. Who was that?
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore, I think. Yep.
We'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lanehart.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Yes.
Need approval for the classified employments, items B2A and B.
Need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mr. Duckman,
Second. Go ahead, Jamie.
second by
Mrs. McIntosh.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart.
Yes.
Finally, need approval for action item B3, supplemental employments, letters A through E as listed.
Need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh,
Second.
second by Mrs. Lanehart. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart.
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
And that concludes my action items.
Okay, did we have anything on the legislative report?
Nothing definitive that has been done yet. They are back in session, been talking a lot about new graduation requirements and how they're going to be changing those over the next year. Also been some chatter about school funding and just general talk at this point in time, more so than anything else.
Anything with CTC?
We met on September 10th, and it was just regular session.
Okay. Any old business? Any new business? Then I need a motion to go in executive, I guess, right?
Yep. Executive
So
session
moved.
for the purpose of.
For the
personnel.
purpose of personnel.
So
So
moved.
moved.
First by Mrs. Lanehart, second by Mr.
Mr.
Dunkman.
Dunkman.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lanehart.
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
And Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Time in is 6:28.
Well, so